Hello, I'm Gary Shotton. I'm here as a part of Inspiring Better Business. And today we're going to talk about the word caged or being trapped. And I refer to this in the sense that we sometimes get trapped in our minds, we get trapped in our thought patterns, we get trapped in a cage in the way we think. And the only way out is to systematically make a concerted effort to change the way we think, to change the way we approach things. And so I'll start out with a quick story here about the time I was with my friend Chris, and it was an early morning business meeting, and we're at his office, which was faced actually at his house, and in his backyard he had some chickens, and he had chickens in a chicken pen, and they had a high fence around it. And at one moment, though, Chris jumped up out of his chair and started running out to this chicken pen. And I looked out, and sure enough, there was a fox. A fox had jumped over inside the chicken pen and was ready to just have havoc with these chickens. Now, the fox wasn't hungry. It just had a sport of killing chickens. And Chris ran out, shooed the fox away, and came back in and said, "Boy, this is a problem. We've got to get rid of that fox." Well, or do something different with the chickens. So the reality was that fox was destined to be killed or to be caged or to be trapped because of the problem he was. And at some point, that being trapped or being caged would be totally contrary to his nature. It has no desire to stay inside a small confinement. Just think about going to a zoo. You go to the zoo, and there's many wild animals that have been caged. And the cage may be a small cage, but it may be something a little bit bigger than that so they could walk around and exercise. But if that's an animal that's fairly new to in captivity, it's pacing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, wanting to get out. Doesn't even know what its thought pattern. It's just its nature is to be free and to be going out and accomplishing more than just in a small confinement. Well, that's what happens sometimes in our lives. Sometimes we come to a plateau in our life and we think, oh man, I got it to this point. I've got enough money for my household. I've got enough money for basic food needs, and I'm making it week by week, paycheck to paycheck. You don't know how many people in America are making it paycheck to paycheck, just barely get along. So to break out of that person has to do something different, has to put up a second job or a second form of income. More time is not always the answer. A lot of times, somehow creating revenue without it being a lot of time, that's part of the answer. Well, I was working with my friend Huygens, who is originally from Haiti, and he lives in Tulsa, where I live, and we're calling back to his homeland to some friends of his, and we connect with a young lady, Suze was her name, and we were talking to her about this changing the way she thinks, changing her approach. And at first she was pretty casual about it. I think she thought it was kind of cool to be talking to an American. But after a while I got real serious with her. I says, you know, you're wasting our time unless you take some action and you try to do something different, because we have plenty of other people we could talk to. And we investigated and we asked some questions and found out that she was probably interested in something to do with cooking. She liked to cook. She had some interest in that area, and that's one of the laws that we talk about, is that if you're going to start your first business, you ought to do something that you're kind of familiar with, you enjoy doing. You're going to spend a lot of time doing this. And so in the process of time, and this was like a 45-minute call, and then a week later we'd call again, and we're not making progress very fast. And so at one point I said, we've got to get serious. Now, Suze, if you had a desire to create some cooking, you got to have some recipes. You got to go know what kind of food you're going to make. And we leveled into it, and it was her idea of some kind of simple dessert. And let's say it would just be a cake, and a cake that you could slice. And you could slice it or put it into small serving sizes, and you could bag it and you could sell those slices. At least that's a start. So now we're starting to change the way we think. And so I asked these questions. I said, Suze, would you have enough cash, because we should think you could start with what you have, to make 10 cakes. You could make the 10 cakes, learn how to sell them, then you're off and running. And she says, oh no, I don't have nearly enough money for that. So I said, well, do you have enough money for 5 cakes? And once again, she didn't feel like she had enough money to get started with 5 cakes. So I lowered the bar and said, what about, would you have enough money for 1 cake? You see, I wasn't of the mindset that I should send money to help people get started. I think people ought to get started with what they have, what's in their possession. And she had enough money for the ingredients for 1 cake. And I said, okay, let's work on the recipe. Tell me what you're going to have in that. Well, I'm making it up now, but like 1 egg and some flour and some salt and maybe some sugar and maybe some other ingredients. And she kind of knew what to do. And I said, well, you want to measure out and calculate the cost of that egg. 1 egg, what does that cost? 1 bit of milk, how much milk would that cost? Just that, would that make that 1 cake? And so we're making a little progress. And the next week we're talking to her and she says, okay, did you make the cake? Well, no, I don't feel I can do that. Well, she's caged. She's trapped. She's trapped in the way she's thinking. She could make 1 cake, but we're talking her into making 1 cake. What would it take to make 1 cake? So after another bit of time, we talked to her again, and sure enough, she got the oven, she had access to an oven, and she said, okay, I made my cake. She was pretty excited about it. And she had already thought a little bit, and I said, well, where are you going to sell it? Well, her first thoughts were, there's no place to sell it because there's any place she wants to sell it, there's already somebody there. Well, forget that. There's always going to be competition. So you've got to be able to go out there and find a place. And she came up with an idea that, well, there's some construction workers, and maybe these construction workers would have a little extra money, and that she could sell a slice of cake, a piece of cake. Okay, great, we're off and running. And she actually did it. And she calculated the amount of ingredients. Now, I'm overlooking a lot because she didn't put a lot of money into what it cost to have an oven and all that. But in the process of time, she was able to say, I made a profit with my 1 cake. Now, I wished I could tell you that she just went on and made 2 cakes the next day and 4 cakes the next day and 8 cakes the next day and 16 cakes and 32, and she's off and running. I don't think she did because she was still stuck in the way she was thinking. She was stuck in her own mind that she can't do this. You see, in business, you've got to achieve or come to an idea that says, I can overcome this. I don't have to be talked into this. I can look at the facts, look at the issues, and I can figure out a way. That's what an entrepreneur does. That's how the entrepreneur proceeds in life, because there's going to be plenty of little hurdles, plenty of little obstacles, plenty of little things that's going to look like impossible to do. And if you can overcome those and get a habit of overcoming those, then you're off and running. That's what you're going to come up with. So I hope in this lesson that you could understand that, well, let's change the way we think, and let's recognize that many times we're trapped. Many times we're saying, that's all I can do, and all I have to do is step out and do some more. Do something different. Start with what we have. Make an effort. Strive to accomplish something that we haven't done in a previous weeks. And yeah, there's a little bit of research into this, but there's a lot of experimenting. That's something we talk about, being willing to experiment. Well, I hope this helps. I hope you're enjoying being a part of Inspiring Better Business. Let's make a difference. Let's change the way we think.